Hello and welcome to Policy Watch. Our top story this week is the recently concluded and confirmed Jet Etihad deal. The deal has come through finally and the aviation sector is abuzz. We will discuss the deal in detail later in the show. Also on Policy Watch this week is the government's decision to clear 13 new power projects. My guest this week is R. Krishnan, senior journalist and analyst. R. Krishnan, welcome to Policy Watch. This is your first time on the show and I look forward to having a good chat with you. Before Mr. Krishnan and I start chatting, as usual, it's time for the headlines. The Jet Etihad deal comes true finally. The Gulf carrier buys a 24% stake in Jet. First big FDI move after India relaxes ownership. PCI clears 13 new power projects, which includes 2 thermal and 1 hydroelectric power project. And stalemate in Parliament continues as opposition demands Chacos and the PM's resignation. Those were the headlines, and without further ado, let's fasten our seatbelts and fly straight into our top story. Abu Dhabi's Etihad Airways has confirmed that it has taken a 24% minority stake in Jet Airways for $379 million. The Gulf carrier will subscribe to 27.3 million new shares at 754.74 rupees per share. Etihad, which seems to be on an aggressive expansion drive, will also make a 150 million equity investment in Jet's frequent flyer program and spend about $70 million to buy Jet's 3 pairs of Heathrow slots through the sale and leaseback agreement announced in February. Jet's majority ownership will still remain with Indian National, and Jet's founder and non-executive chairman, Mr. Naresh Goyal, will hold 51% of the airline after the deal, which is subject now to shareholder approval. The Jet Etihad deal marks the first step of FDI in aviation after India relaxed ownership rules last September. Mr. Krishnan, how do you look at the deal? What does this mean for the sector? We'll go into details later, but on the face of it, what does this really mean for the sector?
Well, it had to happen. If I can take you back into history a little, I think the first time ever an attempt was made, it was in 1996-97, when Tata's wanted to come in with Singapore Airlines. So they wanted to bring in with equity, and there was a resistance. Then they said, we'll make it a technical equity. In fact, a cabinet paper was indeed moved by Murasli Moran, late Murasli Moran, who was the industry minister then. And he had moved 2 proposals at that time, I remember. I was in Hindustan Times as a business editor then. And there it was mentioned that India should allow FDI by foreign carriers in Indian carriers, and also India should allow FDI in print media. And it was a very revolutionary idea, say 17 years ago, and it was squashed immediately. But the proposal, and at that time there was no law which barred FDI by foreign carriers and Indian carriers. So that was the time when Tata's made their application, and I think it was a United Front government. Mr. Gowda was the Prime Minister. And Ibrahim was the civil aviation minister, and Murasli Moran was the industry minister, in charge of all these things. And when this proposal came in, it was spiked, and they said that we will not permit any FDI by foreign carriers directly or indirectly into an Indian carrier. And that was the time when Jet had foreign investment through, I think, airports, Kuwait and kind of the Gulf Air and all that thing. And he had to dispose it off. He became a completely his own company. So after so many years, and there were a number of attempts made in between, it never got cleared. I think it was in 2006, when Kingfisher wanted foreign investment into Kingfisher Airlines, a paper was made, a special white paper, or what they call Vision 2020, was prepared by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It was circulated among a group of ministers, and I remember one of the points made was that when foreign carriers can come less than 1 year old into India, why not Indian carriers more than 1 year old be allowed? So this should be referred to the group of ministers, and again it was killed. Now finally, when all the airlines in India were in deep trouble, whether it is Jet or whoever it is, at different levels of shades of red they were in, the government said, let us get foreign investment by foreign carriers into Indian carriers. And the purpose was to help the domestic carriers do well, and domestic carriers mostly in the domestic operation, a little of their international wing. But what has happened here is, the entire focus is now on traffic going out of India. There is nothing so far we have heard or seen as to how it is going to benefit Indian consumers traveling within India.
That's my next question to you.
That's
the view that it gives Etihad more than what was really required in terms of bilateral rights. They were walking for a while, talks broke down in March, February, I think. Then suddenly there are reports it's a sweetheart deal. The deal has been sweetened somehow, and lo and behold, deal's back on again. My question is this: are we setting a bad precedence for other foreign airlines, foreign carriers coming in for future deals?
No, I won't say it is a bad precedent. It's a precedent, nevertheless, which raises an issue of level playing field. Whether it is Indian carriers, whether it is Indian airports, or whether foreign carriers who are predominantly operating out of India, who get a lot of business out of India. From that point of view, it is a precedent. Now, it will become bad only if you disallow similar facilities to all other airlines. If you extend the same facilities, then it is not bad. It is a precedent which has been, repeated again.
To everyone.
Yeah, but the point is, what is the impact it will have on homegrown aviation industry is something to be seriously watched. That is where it is going to pinch us very, very badly and hardly, because your engineering facilities, your manpower, your pilot, they'll all go out of India for training out. There will be no need for it when you're all being carried by foreign carriers. This is what is bound to happen. That is where you have to look at it.
AirAsia is coming in very soon. Now Etihad, with Tiger and Singapore Airways waiting in the wings, so to say. Yes, this is good for competition. Yes, this might drive.
No, let us not confuse AirAsia with this. They're two different things.
I'll come to what you're saying. People say, yes, this is good for competition, the Etihad deal. This might even drive fares lower, but that's not the whole story, is it? The fares of overseas trips might go down, but what happens to the domestic traveller? Isn't that a question?
This is precisely the issue which people have to raise on Jet Etihad deal. Jet was definitely a very fine product. He was a leader in India, and slowly over a period of time, the economics, Mr. Goyal, who's promoter of Jet Airways, he had worked in such a way that the share of international traffic began to dominate the revenues of Jet Airways than domestic. Today, I think it's about 55% or so. And domestically, full service carriers, Kingfisher is gone, Jet Airways and Air India, these are the other two left. Their shares were increasingly taken away by the LCCs. A very successful Indigo. Then, you have a Spice, you have a Go Air, they started. So, Naresh Goyal also talked, Jet Airways also thought in terms of bringing in a Jet Connect and try to have all economy.
Jet Light and Jet Connect.
So compete that way. But nevertheless, it somehow did not work out. So he started moving out. Then he thought that if we can get foreign investment in the airline and then use it. So the policy does not bar, but the letter or the spirit of the policy was something, and what is happening is something else. There is nothing illegal about it. It's absolutely fine. But it is going to hurt other carriers if you don't extend the same facility if such a demand is made. I am told already there's a major demand from Qatar, from Gulf Air, not Gulf Air, from Air Arabia and Emirates. So they all want, all together, about 80,000 seats more. Can you imagine what will happen to Indian carriers? You have to see the implication. What will happen is Air India will not be able to fly long haul with its aircraft from here. Costs are going to be high. Secondly, all the smaller airlines, comparatively like Indigo or Spice, if they wish to travel long haul over a period of time, their acquisition will not make sense because these hubs are going to take over the whole thing. This may hurt even Jet Airways in the long run itself. If Etihad, for instance, if you look at India, UAE, there are about 484 frequencies a week of all the airlines put together. And Emirates is about 186 or so. Jet has got about 70 to entire UAE, and you have Etihad, which is about 63 or so, is all going to double. When this starts doubling, you will become only a feeder airline. Now, was it the idea that I should become a feeder airline after 18 years in existence as India's top carrier? That's the point I'm making.
Air India, you talked about Air India, is the big question now. Everyone says it's going to be, hurt by this deal or similar deals, that other similar deals. This could well sound out the death knell for Air India.
Well, it appears so. It appears so in the sense that Air India has been going down very often, rescued very often, but somehow it could never come above the water level.
After two bailouts?
Yeah, after two bailouts. In fact, this is a very serious bailout what it is undergoing now. For instance, they have working capital outstanding of more than 22,000 crores. Their cumulative losses in last 5 years since merger is already 22,000 crores. They have debt in terms of aircraft and other things, is about 40,000 crores. So it's a huge thing which is happening. And they were the first one to get 787. 777s, all these, even Jet did not get before Air India got it. In a way, foreign the 43 aircraft which Indian Airlines, part of Air India, got it, they have a very young fleet. With all these things, they have not been able to do well. So there is a problem within Air India which has substantially eaten into it. Now, what will happen, it will be a double whammy in that sense. This thing will have a double whammy on that. In a situation like this, one is not asking for protection. In fact, let me take you, when Air India was likely to be privatized during the disinvestment days of 99, 2000, Singapore Airlines, Air India, when they had jointly bid for it, they were very near it, but for some reason it was aborted, you understand. Singaporeans got scared, they ran away from here. They said, we don't want to get into a political situation. At that time, one of the demands made by Tata Singapore was, please hold on to the bilateral for 7 years. There's so many problems in Air India. Once we go over the whole thing, then we can open the bilateral, then others can do it. That never happened. For instance, the case of Air India, just after merger in 2007, within 4 years, Emirates got huge number of rights. So Air India suffered because Air India's most profitable routes were in Gulf. So this is a situation you have to look into.
Is our aviation policy whimsical? Is it selective? Someone the other day called the Jet Etihad deal a perfect case of crony capitalism.
Well, as of now, it looks like that. But as I told you, if they extend the level playing field, it may not be, but it's a distorted capitalism in the sense that...
But is it whimsical? Is our approach to aviation whimsical?
No, it is whimsical, substantially. There are lots of issues you can look into. You know, the point is, like you know, that show me the man, I'll show you the rule. That kind of situation we have had numerous times here. Well, for instance, let me tell you, look at the domestic aviation. Indigo wanted 100 aircraft first, it was cleared. They want 150, it was cleared. Now, suddenly you find the Minister of Civil Aviation saying that we will not permit this thing. You will get only a 5-year window. Within that, you have to do it. But this is not retrospective. That means the other guy will have all the thing. The new guy will have a problem. Do you know, towards the last stages before, Praful Patel was the Civil Aviation Minister, then it was 2 years ago, there were 13 applicants who wanted to enter this field. 2 of them were quite serious. I think one from US and one from some other place. Nobody's application was entertained. They said it is overcapacity. Kingfisher has gone. That capacity will be taken by others. And today you have a situation, the capacity has come down, the fares have gone up, and the domestic number of people traveling is actually shrinking. The rate of growth is shrinking. Now, it is a result of whimsical policy only, not in terms of forward-looking policy. So, you know, we cannot have a situation where if I know you, I will do this thing. If I don't know you, I will not do it. No.
My last question on this story, sir. My last question on this story is, what is the outlook for the future? Clear skies ahead or more choppy weather to come? Or is it all subjective?
No. I think the way it is now moving, that now that you have opened the floodgates, you cannot prevent it. You can't regulate it now. So I'm sure all the Gulf carriers will come in. Otherwise, it will be something like India's own Gulf War, as I told you. That kind of situation. So all these guys come in, and I'm sure British Airways, Lufthansa, they will all come. No, not today. When you are 5.5 GDP, fine. But you are at 8 to 9% GDP. They all want the Indian market share. That is where what will happen to India's own aviation industry, we have to see.
India's own Gulf War, very catchy word there. But we'll have to see whether we can prevent that or not. We'll take a small break right now. We'll come back with the second story on Policy Watch this week. The power projects, they're cleared by the CCI, 13 of them, if I'm not wrong. We'll discuss that after the break. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Policy Watch. Welcome back to Policy Watch. The Cabinet Committee on Investment, or CCI, on Monday cleared 25 exploration and production blocks, freeing rupees 24,900 crore investments, while also approving 13 power projects entailing investments worth rupees 33,000 crore. Of the 20 power projects reviewed by the CCI, 13 projects involving investment of about 33,000 crore have been cleared. Now, this particular developments are very important for the power sector. It's not in good shape right now. We do all know that. But 13 new projects cleared. Out of them, I think 10 are transmission projects, 2 are thermal projects, and 1 is a hydroelectric project. People say investors will get more confidence. Sure, why not? But is that enough?
The power sector has been one sector, for instance, since the time liberalization came in. I remember the days when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister. Number of times we have introduced new policies, single window clearance, foreign investment should come in, 100% FDI. But this is one sector which has somehow not been able to match up to any policy for a number of reasons which are largely to do with political and also the pricing of power. These are the 2 issues. That is what has brought in. And of late, environment has got into it. And what has been cleared by the Cabinet Committee on Investment, I think it's an attempt to inject some kind of feel-good factor in an otherwise dim scenario.
It's more of a signal than anything else.
Yeah, that's what I said. You feel good. And the government is very, very keen, because the point is, it is not central government alone which can do everything about it.
Yeah, there
are so many agencies within the central government, so many agencies outside the central government at the state level. To coordinate all of them is becoming extremely difficult. And that's what is a result of all these
reforms
things.
on the power front.
Yeah.
We have flawed state electricity board rules and regulations. They don't implement their rules correctly. There's power theft. There's rampant all over the country. The states haven't been able to do anything about it. What have you? All these need to be addressed too, just before we can see a recovery in power sector. And how important are these reforms?
No, for instance, when we're talking about transmission, that's very, very important. I'll just recall the example of Tamil Nadu. No investment has taken place in Tamil Nadu over a period of time. And they are all suffering because of that. I'm not getting into which state government and what. That is evident from what it is. So when they had very peak shortages, they asked the central government that why not transmit that, wheel that electricity to Tamil Nadu, which was being used by Delhi earlier, but not now. There was a problem. You can't transmit, and neither you have the infrastructure to transmit it, nor were you able to do it. So Tamil Nadu suffers. Central government is not able to do it. This has been always an issue in terms of transmission distribution. Also is one thing, but the very wheeling of power is very, very important to transmission towers. So in that sense, if 10 major projects are going to come in, it will definitely have a salutary effect of distributing, wheeling and distributing.
The problem of coal, to my mind, is still the biggest problem in the power sector. We don't produce enough coal. Yes. Now that the pool pricing is out of the window, we're all set to import more of it. What is your view on that?
See, as I told you, there are three sectors, as you know. One is generation. Second is, transmitting it. And then third is distribution. Right. So you have all these three situations. Whether it is thermal or hydro, they have to go through these things. For thermal power plant, the mainstay is coal. And the domestic coal, I think, meets nearly 80% or so. Because at peak level, you have a domestic coal shortage of 20%. If you know, the installed capacity today is about 210,000 megawatts. And in last year alone, I think we had added about 18,000 megawatts. The idea is to add in all 88,000 megawatts by March 2017. It's a huge order. We can easily do it. But at peak level, the shortage is still 9.2%. So as your capacity goes up, as your generation goes up, the 9% of that gap will increase further. And now why is it happening? Because of fuel shortage. Many of the power plants are not able to fully utilize themselves because there's a serious shortage of fuel, which is coal. Now coal is being supplied by Coal India Limited. A lot of people who are importing coal, a lot of people who have got their own private coal mines abroad, like in Indonesia and other places. There are certain rules, I am told, have been changed in Indonesia and others, where the cost has increased. So with the result of which, imported coal is already about 40-50% more. Now, if you're going to pool it, the cost price of coal will increase, which means generation costs will go up. Now, who will pay for it? This is precisely the political situation you find yourself in. But I think Mr. Sindhia has said it, Power Minister, Montega has said it. No state electricity board is ready to increase, make it cost plus. That is why they were on serious, about thousands of crores, a few lakh crores debts they got into. And what the cabinet did recently was to restructure the debt of the STBs. So if you're going to restructure it, we need to know that we'll have to go for a cost plus. And this is not something new. In fact, the present Prime Minister, who was a finance minister then in 92, 93, when the Japanese delegation had come for these things, he repeatedly said there should be user charges, which is something not being done in India. So you need to have quicker environmental clearance. You need to pay the price, what you generate, little plus. It can't be below cost. We are suffering because of below cost. We are suffering again, coal is below cost. So unless you match up the cost and fix a tariff, which is the power purchase agreement, which is subject to revision, you're not going to have any freedom from all these things.
The uptick in tariff has been approved by the government. Now it is going to be passed on to the consumer. That is something we can't really get out of. We have to pay for the power we use, otherwise...
But the point is, it is all at state government level. See, if you look at even the advertisements in Delhi, suddenly the Delhi government claim, see, we are charging only this much per unit of electricity. Look at Bombay, look at Chennai. There is no standard formulation at all. Maybe it should be made standardized that it should be cost plus. Whatever the cost at whatever states you are in, it should be cost plus. Then only it makes sense, and it should be frequently revised. If you don't revise, your power sector will get stunted as it is being now.
Do you see the power sector making a recovery? Stocks, I'm talking about just stocks. I know this is not really, it doesn't really reflect the whole sector, but power companies, the stocks of power companies showed a generous uptick, if I can call it that, immediately after the CCI decision was announced. But that was more of a knee-jerk reaction, wasn't it?
It was a knee-jerk reaction. It was a knee-jerk reaction. As I told you again, see, for instance, you want to start a power plant, these days now, you're not getting land. And in future, to set up power plants, if the land acquisition bill goes through, the cost of land acquisition is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. So where does the cost get factored into? Then you have to get the environmental clearance. How does it get factored into? Then the fuel supply linkages. For instance, you sign a PPA with a concerned state government that you will supply power at such and such price. And you have a fuel linkage or coal linkage, whatever it is. If the coal prices go up, can that PPA be honored at a lower price? Obviously, a generating company can't do it. In fact, recently CERC had decided that this risk in fuel supply cannot be taken with a power generator. He can't do it. It's not charity. You have to have cost plus. You have in every industry you have. Why not here also? And that is an issue which has to be seriously faced and answered. And it cuts across party lines. I'm telling you, any government which comes into power, in state or center, will have to address this thing. I think this is one area, power sector is one area which needs immediate national consensus that this is how we will go about. Otherwise, you will never become an industrial nation. You will not be able to export big time. You will not be able to have infrastructure big time.
Because most of our industry relies on power.
And all of it will impact employment. Ultimately, you are going to hurt yourself. I think this is a message which every political party must understand. They should not quib over this thing. It has to be addressed and it has to be resolved.
Thank you, Mr. R. Krishnan, for joining us on Policy Watch. That, of course, was senior journalist and analyst, Mr. R. Krishnan. Many thanks for coming on Policy Watch. We discussed two stories on Policy Watch this week. The first story was the big Jet Etihad deal that has come through finally. The Gulf carrier has bought a 24% stake, a minority stake in Jet Airways. But it seems to be, some people say, a game changer, but my guest thinks, and a lot of people agree with him, that we have to make the playing field extremely level, equal for all airlines who want to come in. We can't have selective decisions. We cannot have a whimsical approach towards the aviation sector. If we want to increase or make our performances of our domestic airlines better, we have to make a level playing field for all of them. And the big question, of course, still remains. Most of the bilateral rights go to the Gulf carrier in this particular deal. What does the domestic carrier get? The danger is it might just remain like a feeder airline, like you said. So, and if you want to prevent India's own Gulf war, like Mr. R. Krishnan said it, we have to take a slightly better approach towards the aviation sector. The second policy, second story on Policy Watch on this week was the CCI decision to clear 13 new power projects. They include 2 thermal power projects, 1 hydroelectric power project. But national consensus is really needed. All political parties must come together. Power sector is extremely important to the economy. And like my guest mentioned, most of our industries rely on power. And if you have to become a huge industrial nation, we have to get our power sector together. Electricity board reforms are one. The pool pricing, of course, we know is out of the window now, but we have to work around that. We have to do something about the shortage of coal. I think 9.2% at peak, you said. The peak shortage is 9.2%. We have to do something about that as well. But most importantly, I think, is the political consensus needed on the particular thing that power sector needs our immediate attention. It is one of the pillars on which we can build our infrastructural might. That, of course, is all the time we have on our Policy Watch this week. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.